names.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another wonderful evening with the Virtual Tasting Society. I'm Jane Kilkenny, and I'm subbing for Vadim, who is traveling this week. Joining us are John Sue and Lorri Kern from Raising Glasses. Please remember to keep yourself on mute if you're not actively speaking, just to keep background noise to a dull roar. But if you have questions, unmute yourself, jump in, have a conversation. We're happy to have people speak up. So John and Lorri, take it away.
Yeah, we love questions, so feel free to ask questions.
Yeah, and if you don't feel like speaking out in the middle of the session, feel free to dump questions in the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat as we go along. So
yeah.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, thanks everybody for joining us tonight. We are Raising Glasses. We're an independent bottler out in the Boston area. My name is John Shu, and my business partner and wife is Lorri Kern, and we are pretty much the whole company. We do everything from, picking the casks to doing the paperwork to lifting all the boxes to sometimes putting labels on bottles in a panic, trying to make it to tastings in time. So
hosting 2 or 3 of these chats a week with rum clubs all over the country.
Yeah, rum and whiskey clubs for sure. So yeah, it's a real privilege to be here today. So in addition to being independent bottlers, I mean, most of you probably know what independent bottlers are, but essentially, we curate casks from around the world, typically whiskey and rum, and hopefully we pick good ones and we bottle them under our own label, and we take all the credit for all the work that all these distilleries around the world do. In addition to being an independent bottler with our own label, we're also Massachusetts wholesalers and distributors, which most bottlers don't do that because it's well, frankly, it's a pain and it's quite expensive. But for us, it was worth doing because it allowed us to control where our bottles went to. We want to make sure they end up in the right kind of retail and restaurant establishments that can actually promote the stuff properly. And it also gives us the ability to bring in other brands that are looking to get in Massachusetts, so we can distribute for them as well. So that's a whole nother side of our business. So this is our first tasting with the Virtual Tasting Society. So we really want to thank Vadim and Jane for setting this up for us. We've heard a lot about your group, so we're really excited to be able to get a tasting.
Oh, we're very happy to have you here.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask before we get too far into the weeds, we normally like to say something on camera about tasting order for anybody that follows along with us later on. If you want to tell
sure.
Everybody usually has a wealth of glassware, so if we need to open and let it rust, let us know. And if you could give us a rough idea of how you'd like us to go through the tasting.
Sure. Well, why don't I just show you the bottles in the order that we'll be tasting them. So we're going to start with the Opulence, which is our 21-year single grain from Port Dundas. And then after that, we're going to go into 3 Westlands. So we'll have Stories, which is our brandy. These are all named after Seattle musicians. This is our Brandy Carlisle bottle.
Westland is an American single malt out of Seattle. So when we bought 3 of their casks, we decided to name all 3 casks after Seattle musicians. So that was kind of the theme there.
Yeah. So the second one will be Bloom. So Bloom is, can you get this in focus?
Yeah, it's really sparkly.
Bloom is our Kurt Cobain
Nirvana
bottling. And the third of the 3 Westlands is Voodoo, which is essentially our Jimi Hendrix bottle. Okay. So for bottles 5, 6, and 7, it's our Linkwood trilogy. So we're going to start with Emergence, and then move to Ascendance, and we'll close with Eminence.
And we'll tell you a little more about them as we go through the tasting. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, sure, of course. Okay, so yeah, so out of these tastings, I mean, typically we're looking at a third to a half ounce. I think you guys got more than normal. But these are all high proof. So if you have water next to you, or if you have a water dropper, that could be useful. All of them are over, all of them are 50%, I believe.
57 plus, I
Yeah.
think.
Um,
Yeah. We do mostly rums. These are our whiskey lineups, but yeah, but not everything is bottled at cask strength, so it's not.
Yeah. So, not to get too mercenary in the very beginning, but one time we did a tasting like this, and everybody ordered bottles in the middle of the tasting, and at the end of the tasting, we gave the discount code, and it was just a gigantic mess. Like we had to go in and edit lots of orders. So we just let people know that there is going to be a discount code at the end of this presentation.
Yeah, we don't fulfill it ourselves, so we have no control over it once you place the order because it's done through a third party company. But so just remember there's a code. You can use it now, you can use it later if you want anything.
Yeah. So you know, as whiskey fans, we sat through a lot of tastings like you have, and the one pet peeve I always have is where some person just talks and talks and talks, and it's just like forever before you get the first taste of whiskey. So, I said we're going to do a little differently. So why don't we go straight to the first one, and then we'll tell you more about us after you've had a chance to wet your whistle a bit. Okay, so like I said, we're going to start with our 21-year Port Dundas. This is called Opulence. Um, so it's a single grain Scotch. So I mean, most people are familiar with single malt, which means that it's you know, the raw material is only malted barley. Single grain Scotch. I used to think single grain meant that it was only one grain used, but actually the single means it's all from a single distillery, and grain means it can be a mixture of grains. So the dominant grain in opulence is actually corn, and they use American corn. Um, so it's you know, there's also some malted barley in there. I believe there's some wheat in there as well. But the if you were to look at the mash bill for this opulence, it's pretty close to bourbon. This might actually be as close to bourbon as Scotch gets. So so that's one notable thing about opulence. Another notable thing is that it's from Port Dundas. So Port Dundas is it's a dead distillery. I believe it closed around the turn of the century. So you can't get any more of this. So if you end up liking Port Dundas, try to grab try to grab what you can now, because it's getting harder and harder to get. So we bottled this at a cask strength 55.7% ABV. We actually, when we first bought this, it was not sherried. So we bought a hogshead of 21-year Port Dundas. We bottled half of it right away under the name Innocence, and we got a first fill Oloroso sherry quarter cask, and we put the other half in this brand new sherry quarter cask. So let it sit for 9 months, and that gave us what we have here, known as Opulence. I mean, to be completely honest, since this was our very first release under official release under our label, we really wanted to have two bottlings. So that's how we got two bottlings out of one cask. We aged this. Yeah, so let's give it a try if you haven't already.
Sorry if I missed it, but would you say the origin of the name Opulence was?
So we like to give all of our whiskeys, all of our scotches, a name that ends in ENC. So we have the start of the unsherried one was called Innocence, and we thought, well, now that we've kind of corrupted this one with sherry, we're going to give it a fancier name, and we called it Opulence. So if you notice that the Linkwoods also follow the same kind of convention with emergence, ascendance, and eminence.
Yeah, we just make up
Good.
words.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Much appreciated. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. So the sherry should hit you right away, which makes sense because it was put in a brand new sherry barrel. You get your classic notes of figs and stewed fruits and a little bit nutty. It is an Oloroso sherry, so it's going to be more on the richer side, not quite as sweet as like a PX sherry, but also not quite as dry as, let's say, an Amontillado or a Fino sherry. The Dundas itself is typically it's used in a lot of blends, but when you get a really nicely aged Port Dundas, it's a really elegant dram all on its own. And the thing about single grain is that it tends to age more slowly or take on the characteristics of aging more slowly than a single malt. They tend to put it in older barrels. So in terms of age, if you see like a 40-year-old single grain, like I try to kind of calculate it down to about the equivalent of a 20-year single malt, typically. So, but I've always really liked Opulence. It's easy drinking, but it's got some real depth in it. I think the sweetness of the corn in the mash bill plays really nicely with its more advanced age, and also the fact that it's in a quarter cask also helped add age to it. Because if you think the size of the barrel, a lot of the wood influence comes from the liquid that's in direct contact with the wood. So if you have a large barrel, there's more liquid in the middle that's not actively touching wood. If you go with a smaller barrel, you're getting a higher percentage of surface area, and therefore you're also getting a higher oak influence. So yeah, for just 9 months, it took on quite a bit of color from the wood, and also there was probably quite a bit of sherry left in the barrel when we got it because it was new.
Yeah, it was still wet. So one thing we found out from aging some of our bourbons that we aged in rum barrels is that up to 5 gallons of the original spirit stays in the wood. And so like your spirit takes on the character of what was aged in it before. And you can get up to 5 gallons of that just from the wood, not liquids sloshing around in the bottom. So
Yeah. So the Innocence, the unsherried version of this, the ABV was around 50, I think it was about 57%. So you can see, just being in the sherry cask, it went down, about a point. So this retails for $99. There's actually only 5 bottles of this left out there. We may try to get another cask of Port Dundas in the next year or two. But like I said, it's a dead distillery, so it's getting harder to obtain.
Where you guys age it?
Yeah, well, the thing about Scotch, and actually one of the reasons why independently bottled Scotch is really tough is that everything has to be done in Scotland. So obviously it has to be distilled in Scotland. All the aging has to happen in Scotland. All the bottling, all the labeling has to happen in Scotland. So when it's ready to go, we also have to get it approved by the Scotch Whisky Association, even if it's never going to be sold in Scotland. So, because of that, every step adds costs because, the Scots know that they're the only game in town. So everything tends to be more expensive. But if we were to get it and bottle it over here, we would not be able to call it Scotch.
yeah, we would have to just call it like single grain whiskey or
Whiskey,
something. We
yeah.
couldn't call it Scotch if we did anything in the US. So it's 100% all done in Scotland.
Have you guys had a lot of single grain before?
We've had a few here and there. I think some of us are a little more used to a single grain than Scotch. I grew up with more of that and have been investing in Scotch and finding out about it since I joined this group. So I'm pretty sure there's people that have slightly better backgrounds in it than I do, but I think we've all kind of been exploring.
Yeah, we had the same kind of start as well, because we were all like, it's all about single malts. And then when we started drinking single grains, some of the younger ones, frankly, don't have a lot of character, but these older ones are really, really, really underrated. So we've had some great Cameron Bridges, some great North Britishes. They don't have quite the name value of, say, a Macallan or a Glendronach. So you can get some pretty great deals in single grain. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this one.
Yeah, there's a lot on it. I got a whiff of corn off of the nose just right off the bat, and then it's got that sherry note on the palate and a little bit of the vanilla from being so much older and the barrel influence. It's really quite fabulous. Not surprised there's only 5 left, but that kind of sucks for us. So
yeah. Yeah, we actually were not going to put this into the lineup, and then we were talking to Vadim, and he's like, hey, if you got a little bit left and you have enough to for our guests, then I'd love to include it. And I'm like, well, we got 5 bottles left online, so let's give it a shot. So you folks may be the last ones we ever taste on this.
And we also dropped the price. We had it at $129 until this week, until April 1st. So
Yeah,
just dropped the price on it just to clear out the last 5 bottles. But yeah, we wouldn't have normally tasted you guys on it because there's so little left. We just drink it ourselves.
yeah.
How many are left right now?
Sorry.
How many are left at this point?
There's
5.
there's 5 bottles left in our online store, and we're, as far as our warehouse is concerned, we're all out. It's our warehouse has been sold out of this for almost a year at this point.
Cool.
Okay, so
Yeah,
a little bit more
single
back.
grain is great.
Okay, yeah, we love the single grain fans.
Yeah, I'm loving it as well. And just a quick question: where do you ship in the U.S.? I'm in Texas, not in California. That's why I asked.
Texas, unfortunately, is one of the 8 states that we can't ship to. So
Ouch!
I'm sorry about that.
Where in Texas are you though?
Just north of Austin.
Oh, my daughter lives in Austin, so like hit me up offline.
Oh, okay.
Maybe we can find a workaround.
Awesome.
My daughter lives in Pflugerville.
Are you
I'm very
are utilizing our children?
I'm gonna pour out my 30-year-old daughter for
Nice.
whiskey.
Yeah, I guess why not have kids as beer smugglers? Okay. So yeah, a little bit about how we got here. This is actually our about our 7th or 8th company.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of startups over the last 30-40 years in a lot of different fields, like music, market research, technology, a bunch of things. So that kind of leads us to how we got where we are today. So this is a picture from 2017. I'm sure a lot of you can also provide a similar picture like this. We were just big fans of whiskey. So first bourbon, and then we really got into Scotch. And in 2018 and 2019, we had the opportunity to buy some casks just as private customers. So we got 2 casks of New Riff, which is a bourbon distillery in northern Kentucky. We had to drive down there and pick up the bottles and the barrels because New Riff did not have any distribution in Massachusetts. So we actually had to drive all of it back ourselves. But while we had the casks, we thought, hey, why don't we drop them off at Privateer, which is a rum distillery about a half hour north of Boston. So they also created 2 bottles of rum, which were aged in our New Riff bourbon casks. So that was fun. We got some really good feedback on that. A lot of our friends and family, thought we had done some pretty good picks, and we always thought it would be really cool someday to have our own label. So this brings us to the year 2020, where
The best year ever.
yeah. I got an offer to sell my software company, which I had for 22 years. And this is where I discovered the magic formula for selling your company is the night before the big meeting where they'd look over your financials and everything and decide whether to make an offer. The night before, you go out with those people and you have a cocktail and then maybe have a bourbon like E.H. Taylor, and then you have some wine, and then you have some Guinness, and then you decide maybe I should go home. So you get an Uber, but then you don't feel so good. So you tell the Uber driver to stop, and then you jump out of the Uber and you vomit. And then you think, maybe I should just walk home, not realizing it's below freezing and home is still a good 10 miles away. So then you get back in an Uber and so you show up at the meeting the next day and you're a complete wreck. So if you do all these things properly, you too will sell your technology company. So I think a lot of it was just we were all just in such pain from terrible hangovers. Nobody really wanted to do the meeting, and they were just like, "Okay, look, let's just get down to brass tacks. What do you want for the company?"
And despite what you think, when you own a liquor company, you don't really drink that often. I don't think I've seen you drunk 3 times in 20 years. So
No, it was
yeah, we don't really drink that way, but this was,
So anyways, it was 2020. It was March. Sold the company, and then 5 days later, this happened. So the pandemic pretty much shut down the whole country. The guy who bought my company had said if it had been 5 days later, he would have killed the deal. But too bad, he was stuck with the company, and he was also stuck with one of the conditions of us selling the company was that he was not allowed to lay off any of our employees for a year. So it worked out for employees. They all had jobs through the pandemic. It actually worked out for him in the long run because in 2023, his company got named number 5 on the Inc. 5000 list of the 5,000 fastest growing companies in the country, which I would love to say I had played a big part in, but I think 3 years after me leaving, you want your company successful, get rid of this guy. So they've been very successful. They got a successful company, and we got a little bit of money out of it, and we're able to buy a bunch of casks. So that's how we ended up having this company. All right, so let's get back to drinking. So the next 3 are from Westland, which is a distillery out of Seattle, Washington, so up in the Pacific Northwest. And they specialize in American single malt, so essentially the American equivalent of Scotch. And this goes back to, I think it was 2016, where we really first encountered Westland. We had been told that the master distiller for Westland was coming to Boston and doing a tasting. And pretty much all we knew is that he was apparently really, really good at what he does, and was a legend of the industry, and his name was Matt Hoffman. So we run down to the tasting, and there's hardly anybody there. And we look around, and I don't see anybody who looks like what I think Matt Hoffman looks like. I'm expecting some guy with the beard and white hair and probably 60, 70 years old or something. And instead there was just this kid who was there, and nobody was talking to him. So we felt kind of bad for him. We thought, okay, well, I guess Matt Hoffman couldn't make it, so why don't we go and talk to him? And within 2 minutes, we began thinking, wait a minute, this kid is Matt Hoffman. So it's kind of like if you've seen The Empire Strikes Back, it's like that scene where Luke all of a sudden realizes, like, you're Yoda. Because the level of stuff he was talking about, I'd never experienced before. So one of the questions that we asked him was, how did you make Westland so good and have it be so young? Because at that time, I mean, most of their stuff was about 2 to 4 years. And you can make a good bourbon in 2 to 4 years because it's Kentucky, it's hot, right? But Seattle, I mean, for anyone who's ever been to Seattle, the weather was probably terrible. It's like Scotland. It's cold and damp and miserable. So like, how do you make a really good whiskey quickly under those conditions? So pretty much what we got from Matt was that Westland is playing with variables and pulling levers that Scotch distilleries just don't play with. So I say it starts with the barley. If you've toured Scotland and done a tour of the distilleries, you begin to notice like almost all of them get their barley from the same place. It's just a commodity to them. They use their centuries of expertise and the terroir and their worm tubs and their stills. That's how they generate all the variations. But Matt Hoffman uses up to 6, sometimes 7 different malts. So different strains of barley. Some of them are roasted differently. So yeah, doing a lot of stuff with barley that you typically don't see. He also plays around with yeasts. I don't know if I've ever heard any Scotch distiller talk about yeast, but Matt has a brewing background. So if any of you are home brewers or have ever worked in a brewery, you know that yeasts are a major component of flavor for beer. So why not play around with that? So one of the yeasts that they use is a Belgian Saison yeast that brewers often use to make saisons. They also play around with different kinds of wood. So the one that they're really known for is a Gariana, which is a wood in the Pacific Northwest. It's fairly endangered, so it's very hard to get, but it really imparts a lot of kind of a unique spice profile that you wouldn't be able to get using the typical woods that you use in Scotch, because the typical woods they use in Scotch are ex-bourbon barrels, of course. So the final thing is the amount of time that they let the mash ferment. Typical fermentation times, you're kind of looking around 3 days for a lot of whiskeys. Westland often goes all the way up to 12 days. So the longer you let that yeast eat away at the sugars and output alcohol, it's also putting out more of these different flavor compounds. You may have heard of congeners, you may have heard of esters, those kind of things. So I believe a lot of that gives Westland its unique flavor profile as well. Okay, so yeah, so why don't we get into drinking these? So like we said, this is our Seattle music series. So the first one is what we call stories. So the cool thing about these 3 Westlands is each of them has a different malt recipe, and each of them has a different barrel finish. Okay. So this one uses their 5 malt recipes, so 5 different types of barley, which we'll describe on the next slide. But it's aged in Mount Gay rum casks. Now, I'll be honest, I think most rum finished whiskeys are terrible.
They suck.
I really tend to dislike rum finishes. The one that people often have a lot first is the Caribbean cask by Balvenie. And a lot of people love that bottle, but I've never loved that bottle. But we do love this because Mount Gay is a rum distillery in Barbados. And if you're going to taste Mount Gay against other rums, you might say like, this is kind of scotchy for a rum. It's not overly sweet. It tends to be fairly elegant. It has a a nice strong wood backbone to it. So I guess it's not too surprising that if you can get your hands on a Mount Gay barrel and you put malt whiskey in it, that it plays well together. So yeah, let's give this a try. Yeah. So so the finish on this is 4 years and 7 months in the Mount Gay cask. And the first question we asked them when we heard they got a Mount Gay cask is, how did you get a Mount Gay cask? Because you almost never see anything that's matured at Mount Gay. They almost never give up their barrels. And the answer we got is, okay, do you know who owns Mount Gay? I'm like, yeah, it's Remy, right? Like, yeah, like, do you know who owns Westland? It's like, oh yeah, it's Remy. So I'm sure Remy told Westland and Mount Gay, hey guys, give each other's casks. So that's why we got this kind of rare finish.
We've been trying to get our hands on a cask of Mount Gay for several years, and they don't give up any of it.
No, they're all, it's definite no. Yeah, so this is so we bottled this a cask strength, 55% ABV. I think this is the lowest that we'll be tasting today.
I get a little bit of cinnamon. I don't know what you guys are getting, but I get a little bit of like
Yeah, it's a lot. You get a lot of the baking spices. You get some of the molasses character from the rum. Um, the uh the 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 one thing that I get from almost all Westlands is this kind of almost a chocolatey kind of cocoa milk chocolate note to it. Um, that's
It
good.
reminds me of Whoppers, like
Yeah,
almond with balls.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and almost has kind of that. I may be crazy, but almost kind of has that texture, like almost a powdery cocoa texture to the mouth feel on it, especially as it dries out. So that's why I can always spot a Westland a mile away, because when I get that kind of feeling to it.
What kind of tasting notes are you guys getting?
I'm definitely getting a cinnamon note along with some other baking spices, that tiny little hit of molasses. It's actually a little bit sweeter than I was expecting, but I can definitely taste the Westland on it.
Mhm.
You're right, it does have kind of a distinct, from the way that they do everything, it is kind of distinct, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So like we said, this is so we call it stories. This is our tribute to Brandy Carlisle, who is in, who does come from Seattle, and Seattle is actually how we ended up getting these casks, because we actually didn't set out to get to bottle Westlands. We didn't even think we could get any. We happened to be in Seattle for Brandy Carlisle Music Festival, and
At the Gorge.
at the Gorge, and this is
Yeah.
where Joni Mitchell played her first official concert in several decades.
20 years, yeah.
So while we were there, one of our friends was like, "Hey, you can go see Westland?" I'm like, "Oh, I feel like we've tasted everything from Westland. I don't feel like we have any need to actually go there." And he's like, "Oh, one of my friends works there, and she's expecting you." And so we're like, "All right, fine." So we go down to Westland. We're getting this tasting. I'm like, "Oh yeah, okay, yeah, it's good. Yeah, we've had most of this, but yeah, we've always liked Westland." But she said, "I heard you're an independent bottler. Would you be interested in buying some casks of Westland?" We're like, "What? Really?" Yes, of course. So we set up another meeting, and then they had one of their barrel directors sit down with us. And so she gave us all these samples, and I'm like, where is this stuff coming from? Because it's had all these crazy finishes and the age statements. Because the stories was 8 years, so they had a lot of 8-year, 9-year, 10-year casks.
Most of what they release is 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
or they just don't even bother putting age statements on. So you have this, for Westland, it's fairly super aged stuff. And I was like, oh my God, this stuff is fantastic. So I was dreading the price. I had a certain number in my head. It was like, okay, this is what it's going to cost. And so he said, okay, so what do these casks cost? And the number that they named was literally 1/3 of the price that we were expecting. And we're like, okay, so that's for that one. What about all these other ones? And they're like, nope, they're all exactly the same price. So didn't matter how old it was, didn't matter what kind of cask finish it was in. It was insane. So we immediately committed to 3 casks, and we're thinking maybe we'll get more, but we'll start off with these 3. So what what happened afterward was kind of funny. We got a call from the new director at Westland, because Matt Hoffman had announced that he was leaving. And sure enough, we get on the call, and he's like, okay, so kind of a weird thing happened. Our our barrel director in Seattle is not in sync with all of our regional directors. And we kind of knew this because we sat in on a couple other barrel picks for other retailers around here, and their pricing was much, much higher for pretty much the same stuff. So we said, yeah, so we kind of made a mistake. We will honor the price that we gave you. So yeah, kudos to Westland. They stood by what they promised us. But you're not going to get any more casks at that price. And then they gave us the actual price list, and we're like, wow, okay. So we had this really great opportunity to get some very special casks, really unique casks that Westland just won't release themselves, probably because there's just not enough volume, or maybe these were Matt Hoffman's crazy personal experiments, and the new guy was like, I don't know what we're going to do with this. We should just try to sell it. So we got it at a great price, and so that's why if you know what these Westlands go for, a lot of them go from 100 all the way to $160 a bottle. So we were able to come in quite a bit under that, which we were happy to do because we really love Westland. We want more people to try it. Okay, so I said we would talk about the 5 malt recipe. So their classic 5 malt recipe has a wide range of malts. I'm not going to go into every single one because we'd be here all night. But it's not only is it different strains. The dominant one is what they call the Washington Select Pale Malt, which is about as close to Scottish Highland barley as you can get. So that's where you get the real signature kind of those cereal notes, kind of biscuity notes, a little bit nutty. And then it goes all the way through, these different malts are typically used for beer. There's a secret Wisconsin malt in there. But the last one is a pale chocolate malt. And it's called chocolate, not because it actually has chocolate in there, but because they just roast it to a point where it releases more flavors that are more reminiscent of, like coffee, cocoa, maybe a little bit of tobacco. So I think that mixture between the pale malt, where you get those cereal notes, and the chocolate malt, where you kind of get the cocoa notes, really gives Westland its classic signature. All right, so let's go
quick comment before we go to the next one. So first off, I'm loving this one, and I agree with you. A lot of rum cask finish I don't love. The only other one, actually, I have a Westland, kind of a sister single cask that I bought at their place, 652 versus 66540, so very close.
Okay, yes.
And 7 years instead of 8. So this is the only one I've liked that is rum finished, but now I like this one better. So yeah, and I paid more than those 90, by the way. So yeah, loving it.
Thank you. Yeah, one thing that we'll cover is that slowly you're starting to see some of the casks from this generation come out. So it's really cool that you got one. Yeah, and you can tell by the cask number how close it is. So yeah, 6540.
Yeah, I think Matt Hoffman was doing some really cool things before he stepped away, and now they're left with all of these barrels that Matt did as trying creative, and so now they have to sell them because there's not enough to do bulk as part of their main line. So if you got one of those, that's really cool. Because I think Matt's the genius. I can't wait to see where he ends up next.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments about stories? Okay. All right. Let's move to Nirvana. So this is our Kurt Cobain cask. So we call it Bloom. So the malt used in this is not the 5 malt recipe. They're just using only the pale malt. So that's the dominant malt in the 5 malt recipe. The use of pale malt essentially is a way to get the malt influence kind of out of the way so that the cask influence can really shine. So the second that you taste this, you should get hit with that really rich PX sherry right away. So let's give this a try.
And this one's at 59% ABV, so it's got a little kick. If you need water, feel free to add.
Yeah, so you should, the classic kind of raisin syrup qualities of PX. This spent all 8 years, 8 months in PX, and that you don't see very often. Because typically you want to use the PX as a finishing cask, and you want to use it as many times as possible. So the fact that this sat there for almost 9 years makes this quite a rarity. But what I like about it is that while it's sweet, it's not super sweet. Sometimes PX just tastes like you just squeezed a bunch of syrup right in there. This feels very integrated into the Westland distillate.
Yeah, I get lots of raisins and currants on that.
This has got so much of that raisin on the nose and that really super rich mouthfeel from the PX.
Mm-hmm.
It's stunning.
Yeah, what's nice is that it kind of, well, I'm gonna use the word bloom, as typically when you get towards the end, it kind of tails off. I swear that after a few seconds, it actually expands in flavor. It kind of blooms in flavor, and then you get into the tail end of the finish. Yeah, but this is probably the favorite out of the 3.
Yeah, that was one that we couldn't pass up.
It drinks a lot smoother if you just look at the alcohol. it drinks a lot smoother than you'd come to think.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and I think a lot of that is because it spent all 9 years.
I'm
And
sure.
it also has kind of a syrupy feel to it, the viscosity on it.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, definitely the mouthfeel on it is thicker than the one on the
Right.
stories. So if you like really kind of fat whiskey, this is a good example of that one.
It kind of reminds me of my grandmother used to make something with molasses, and she would boil down the molasses and then add it, and kind of gives me kind of that kind of thing sometimes, like that kind of thick sweet, but not too sweet. So it's
This
kind
is
of cool.
almost chewy. It's,
Yeah,
Almost
it's
chewy.
almost chewy.
Yep.
yeah, they talk about the bourbon chew. So while you're drinking a bourbon, if you want to get more of the flavors, you actually chew it, which I think you're just activating your salivary glands or something. But yeah, this is similar. This is a very chewy kind of whiskey.
I
Yeah,
can
I
almost
forgot
taste the
to-
huckleberries from up there.
Huckleberries, huh? Interesting.
I
I've
haven't.
had elderberries from central Pennsylvania, so I wonder if that's that's similar. So a funny thing about this cask, so it's a cask 2478. When we were tasting it with friends and trying to decide whether to move on it or not, one of our friends said, "Hey, I have cask 2479 instead of 78." So this came out of your neck of the woods. So this was a Westland cask that was picked by K&L. You guys are lucky to have K&L, let me tell you. Like we have usually like 2 or 3 times a year, our friend group does
Bye.
a smuggling mission. They
Yeah.
don't ship to Massachusetts, so we send it to a friend in New Hampshire, and then we all drive up there and grab all the bottles. But yeah, so they released they released pretty much the same thing. It was a little younger than ours, but otherwise it was also a PX, aged completely in PX. Yeah, they sold it for $110, and ours is going for 90, so I guess we should have charged more, but we didn't know. And we actually did a blind tasting of our cask against the K&L cask, and I actually picked the K&L cask, but everybody else picked the Bloom. So yeah, I'd say these bottles are pretty competitive.
And also, didn't this one sell out like in a day or something?
No, that's the next one.
Oh, the next one.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. This one is long sold out. This is
Yeah, it's
my
fine,
understanding.
But one of them sold out like quickly.
So
But yeah, K&L knows what they're doing, that's for sure.
yeah, if we had known that, I would have felt very confident about our pick. So yeah, any other questions or comments on the Plume?
Because now we're gonna do the weird one.
All right. So Voodoo is our Jimi Hendrix cask. Doing kind of a no by putting a peated one in the middle of the tasting, but we think you guys can handle it. So yeah, so this is yet another different malt and yet another different finish. So this is a peated malt. So they use peated barley from Scotland. There actually is quite a bit of peat in the Pacific Northwest. The problem is most of it is in protected areas. So for many years, Westland has been trying to get a carve out to be allowed to harvest some of that peat for their own purposes. But back when this was released, this is a 9-year, so as opposed to the others, which are 8 years plus. So back 9 years ago, they did not have a carve out, so the only barley that they could get that was peated was from Scotland. So this is actually Scottish peated barley. The ABV is falls right between the stories and blooms. This is 55%.
57.
Oh, sorry, 57%. And it's finished in Banyuls, which is really unusual finish. Most people don't know what Banyuls is. So, but why don't we give this a taste first, and then we'll go into the story behind Banyuls.
The nose on this is amazing. It's got campfire kind of smoke instead of the medicinal which I think I
Mhm.
prefer in a lot of respects, but it's also the palate kind of comes right back through with it. And it's got that Banyuls kind of edge to it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
I
not as
saw
much
that and I went, I know what that is. That's gonna be fun.
yeah, there's not as much iodine in it as you get sometimes with peat. So
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the peat on this is more like the Highland peat. So more like you get from Orkney Highland Park type peat, not so much the Isla, Lafroig, Lagavulin peat, which is much more medicinal, much more kind of dirty. I It's funny, sometimes when I'm nosing this or tasting this, I'm like, yeah, this is barely peated at all. And then everybody else is like, no, this is quite peated. So I think for Highland peat, I must not be very sensitive to it because I find this fairly mellow. But what do you guys think? Does it come across as very peaty to you?
It's peaty, but it's
I
not
think it's
like
perfectly
super peaty.
peaty.
Perfectly peaty. Love it. I should put that on the label.
Perfectly peaty. It's funny because after we emptied this barrel and bottled it, we just threw a barrel of our rum into the same barrel, and it overpowers the rum so much.
Yeah, it's only been in there
Like,
3 months.
It's been there 3 months.
Sure.
I tasted it 2 days ago, and I'm like, we got to dump that. That's not, like we have to do something else. Like, the peat feels soft on this, I think, but when we put it in with our rum, it was just overpowering. I mean, in my opinion.
Yeah, so we're getting some comments that there's a waxiness, which I totally get. There's on the palate you can almost feel it kind of coating the top of your mouth. And the non-peat fan actually likes that. It's not ashtray. Yeah, ashtray is definitely Iowa. And this is not that.
Yes.
So so this also goes for $90 for 750 ml. And let's talk about Banyuls. So Banyuls is also a French dessert wine. So if you know your port, if you know Marsala, sherry, it's in that same vein. It's made similar to port. So it's like you're making your wine and it's fermenting, but then you throw in some alcohol, some very high proof alcohol in there to just stop the fermentation. So when you stop the fermentation early, that means there's still a lot of sugar out there because the yeast hasn't had time to eat up all the sugar and output alcohol. If you taste Banyuls, and if you get a chance, you should really try it. It's really quite wonderful. It is sweet, but it has a lot of that kind of raw grape character that I like. So they mature it. Sometimes they mature it in oak barrels, but sometimes they just throw it in glass and let it sit in the sun, which is a process called maturization, because that's how they make Madeira. They basically let it cook. So flavor-wise, if you've had a ruby port, just try to imagine a ruby port that's got kind of more spice and more oak, more tannin, just more structured. So you still get the juiciness of ruby port, but it's got much more of a foundation in it. So that's why I really like Banyuls, because I find it more balanced than a ruby port. So hopefully you get some of the characteristic of that. That like typically I tend to like peat if it's one of two things. If it's a very, very old peat, peated whiskey, so let's say like a Lafroig 25 or 32 or something like that, where it's had time to really kind of mellow out and become more chocolatey than ashtray. Or if you pair it with a nice dessert wine finish, so you kind of have the sweetness and the savoriness of the peat blending together. That's my jam when it comes to peat.
Have you ever had the Octomore 12-2? It was finished in a Sauternes cask.
Oh, was it? Oh,
Yeah.
Octomore is. I love Octomore because it's super peaty, but it's this nice heathery kind of floral peat.
Except punch you in your face like an Ardbeg or
Yeah.
Lafroig. So Octomore is my favorite. I don't even like peat, but I love everything from Octomore because it's just soft peat, which I just really jam on.
Yeah. How was the Sauternes finish on that one?
Oh, it's excellent. I mean, it was the first Octomore I ever tried. and that became a very expensive experiment for me.
Right?
Because I now have all the 13 series. I have the 14 series. I ended up actually ordering them straight from Kickstarter. But anyways, we're here to talk about your whiskey, not Octomore.
No, it's fine. I love talking about
Yeah,
Octomore.
no, we love to nerd out about whiskey.
We
in
nerd
general,
out
so.
about whiskey all day long. So
Yeah, when the reason I ask about the Sauterne finish is that some of my favorite bottles ever have been Sauterne finishes, but my most disappointing, most hated bottle has also been Sauterne finishes. So
yeah, I mean,
that's one that we may not play with because it's such a gamble. Like when you do a bad Sauterne finish, they talk about the noble rot of Sauterne. That's kind of what I taste, is just rot. It's bad. So yeah, if you got a good one, congratulations.
yeah. Yeah, but the Octomore it's a cult favorite for me. So.
Yeah. Oh, looks like somebody bought an opulence. Yeah, Tony, I hope you use the code. We do have a question about Burning Cane, which is actually what the first Foursquare that we released.
It's gone.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that one's long gone. We actually sold so much of it that we forgot to keep some for ourselves, and we had to go running back into a liquor store to buy our own bottles back, which I was hoping nobody would recognize me, but the cashier person said,
Isn't this yours?
"Isn't this your own bottle?" I'm like, "Yes." So it was really embarrassing.
So between the two of us, because we're a blended marriage, we have 6 kids total. And so my goal was to keep one bottle of everything that we produce so that when they get married at some point, I mean, maybe they won't, but if they do, we'd have a bottle of each of our releases for the kids. And all of a sudden I realized he sold out all of our Burning Cane and we had none. So we had to go buy it back at retail.
Yeah, which is just pathetic. But
it is
pathetic.
But whatever.
Yeah, those dang kids better appreciate this.
It's dedication to a plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they're 22 to 33 now, so I don't know, maybe it's not looking good for the whole marriage thing. Maybe we'll just get to drink it ourselves.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So a comparative bottle to this one. So recently, Single Cask Nation, fantastic independent bottler. They put out a Westland, which was also peated about the same age. They finished theirs not in a Banyuls, but in a Pinot de Charente cask. So they put it on sale online, and the whole thing sold out in half an hour at $125 for their bottling. So I have yet to taste that one. We're actually at an event tomorrow with them, so I'm hoping to get a taste of them and be able to compare it to our Voodoo.
But ours is less than 125.
Yeah, ours is a little less than 125. I'm sure that they paid full price, whereas we got that weird discount, unintentional discount.
The Single Cask Nation, we love them. They're great independent bottler. If you ever see their stuff on your shelves, they're good people.
Yeah, they're one of the great original American IBs.
They just got bought too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've enjoyed a couple of tastings with them. They're just so much fun to talk to.
Yeah, really nice guys. Love them.
Yeah, I think Josh is still in charge though. Josh and Jason.
We're doing an event with Josh tomorrow night. So, but yeah, we love him. We love all of them.
Okay, so we're about to leave Seattle and go to Scotland, but before we leave Westland, any final comments or questions?
So first of all, kudos to you for obviously for picking the barrels, but just a reminder to me of how good Westland is. So 3 very, very different whiskeys, and they're all fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we felt really to be able to get these, especially at the price that we got them.
I mean, of these 3, so I would definitely say the Voodoo is my favorite.
Yes, nice. Yeah, one thing we do I should mention, one thing we do at the end of every tasting is we like to go around and have everybody name what their favorites are. So keep that in mind while we're tasting through these last 3.
Yeah, I would love to hear. We like to get your opinions on this, but
FYI, we've done like 3 or 4, maybe 5 tastings with Westlands over the last few years, and like Anna Armstrong Hines is part of the group.
Oh, I know Anna.
Yeah.
She's fantastic.
She's part of our group, done stuff, and yeah, these are definitely like great, exceptional representations of them. So kudos to that.
Yeah. Yeah, we love Anna. Anna actually is the one that helped us, who gave us the selections to try, maybe 10 of them, and we picked these 3. So she's great. We love all of those people.
Yeah, she actually pulled some strings to get us the voodoo because that had been claimed by another group, but she said, you can't have this, but we're just gonna let you taste it. And of course, when you find out you can't have it, it tastes awesome. So I basically made myself an incredible pest for the next 2 weeks. It's like, yeah, did the group commit? Did they commit? Did they commit? And finally she said like, okay, fine, you can have it. Screw that other group.
Yeah, they're fantastic. We love
Yeah.
working with them.
Yeah, another kind of funny story. Maybe it's not funny, but when the voodoo cask showed up, the volume on it was really, really low. And I kind of felt bad because I knew that we had gotten a great buy on it, and I knew that they were charging the same price regardless of, the age or the volume or anything. But I did say like, yeah, I mean, just so you know, like this came in pretty low. And they gave us a discount on that. So not only did they sell it to us at a discount when they found out the volume was low, they did good by giving us a break on the price. So yeah, very honorable company. They're really impressed with them. Okay, so let's go to Scotland. So these are our linkwoods. So we got some samples. And for Scotch, it's very difficult to get samples. So we were lucky to get a nice selection of samples for this round. And the second we opened this linkwood sample, the nose on it just sold us immediately. We knew we wanted it. It was just beautifully floral on the nose. And like most linkwoods, it had that classic Speyside characteristic, but kind of had the heaviness and the thickness of linkwood. So we knew we wanted it. But the problem was it came in a sherry butt. So sherry butt is one of the largest casks that you can get. So if you think of like a standard American bourbon barrel, you can usually get about about 200-ish bottles out of it. It depends on the angel share, but you figure around 200 bottles of it. A sherry butt can be 500 to 600 bottles. And we're like, okay, we're a small company. Do we really think that we can sell 600 bottles of the same thing? And we were not willing to take that risk. So what we did is we essentially divided the barrel into thirds. The first third we barreled as is. So 9-year, it's emergence untouched. So that's the original distillate.
And that's your first taste.
That'll be your first taste. The second taste is what we call ascendance. We took that Oloroso quarter cask that we used for opulence, and we put the linkwood in there. So we only put that in for another 9 months. So there was still a lot of life left in that quarter cask. So the ascendance essentially is double Oloroso, because the emergence was a sherry butt, so it spent all 9 years in that sherry butt, and then the ascendance has another hit of Oloroso sherry on it. And the third cask, the Eminence, we purchased a brand new Madeira cask, so that's a first fill Madeira. So this is kind of a interesting side by side where you can see like what if you take a whiskey, it starts like this, and then you treat it with casks, how does it evolve? And sometimes you can kind of cobble something together, but in this case, this is the same exact whiskey with 3 different treatments on it. So a nice way to compare and contrast. Okay, so we're going to start with the first one. So this is the emergence. So yeah, so 9 years in a sherry butt. So not a maturation, not a secondary maturation, not a finish, all 9 years. And the first question we get is when you look at the color, it's like, this is kind of this beautiful golden straw color, but it does not look like a 9-year sherried Scotch. How could this be? Well, the answer, I'm sure, is that this was not the first time, probably not the second time, probably the third or fourth time that this sherry butt had been used to age whiskey. So obviously the more times you use it, the less character you're going to get out of it. But on the other hand, it spent all 9 years in that cask. So this is one of those, I'd say, fairly rare cases where you've had very, very gentle sherry aging for a very, very long time. So when you taste this, you can definitely tell that it's sherried, but it's definitely not hit you over the head. If anything, the sherry has had so long to gently integrate itself with the spirit that it takes on a character of its own. It doesn't taste so much like a sherried Scotch. It's more a whiskey that has had sherry in its backbone for a really long time. So let's give this a shot. So 60.6% ABV cask strength.
Are any of you guys video game players by chance? Do you know who Link is?
Yeah, we'll get into it.
I was just curious.
The main character from Zelda.
That's right. Very good. Very good.
The game I was never able to beat as a kid, even when I got all the cheats and got a raft and a whistle and I didn't know what to do. No.
Oh,
Well, which version are we talking about, Jordan? Come on.
Oh, I'm talking about like the OG Legend of Zelda.
Link to the Past.
8-bit, baby.
Yes, 8-bit, nice and blocky. Okay, yeah, so
This is
that's the
very
characteristics.
floral.
Excuse me?
It's very floral. It's got
Yes. Mhm.
It's almost like you just dunked elderflower in it.
Yeah, I sometimes tell Lori, you could just use this as perfume. I'd be very attracted to you if you just have a little of this behind your ears.
Yeah, I can totally wear this as perfume.
That's hot, right? Mhm.
Yeah, so it has your classic Speyside notes. You get your kind of orchard fruits, your peach, apple. You definitely get the honey. But we've always liked Linkwood because it does have that heavier body to it. It has a thicker mouthfeel, a deeper viscosity to it. So it kind of gives it's more brawny than most Speysides.
Given they are from the same cask, so I put them in 3 Glencairn. So I'm smelling the I guess number 2 and this one together, and they're very, very similar.
I mean, it is the same juice. It's just aged
Yeah.
differently.
Right.
Yes.
Which I find fascinating because the third one have a
Actually,
much
never-
different nose.
Yeah, that's because the difference between 9 years in Oloroso versus 9 years, 9 months in Oloroso probably is quite similar on the nose. But if you look at the color, you can tell it's
Yeah, I mean, which is confusing AF, right? I mean,
yes, exactly. Yeah, that's why we think this is kind of fun to taste these side by side because you can see like the evolution. And okay, where does that flavor
and that's
come from?
that's the stuff I geek out on trying something that theoretically is the same thing, but then you just instead of turning left, you turn right.
Yep.
Kind of a thing, right?
Yep, and hopefully we didn't take the wrong turn, which is like
Hey,
aging.
you're gonna get them no matter what, right?
Yeah, doing secondary maturations in Scotland is super nerve-wracking because by the time you get a taste of it, it may be 6 weeks until you actually get it in your hands. So trying to project, okay, so what I'm tasting is 6 weeks ago, and should we pull it now? Should we not pull it? It's just a very, very slow and risky process. As opposed to, if we're maturing bourbons or maturing rums, we could literally drive to the bottling facility or the warehouse and taste it every week if we wanted to. So, yeah, we're glad they turned out as well as they did.
We're actually shocked they turned out as well.
Okay, so a little bit more about Linkwood. You probably haven't seen a lot of Linkwood bottled by itself. They're owned by Diageo, of course, like just about every distillate in the world. Most of it goes into Johnny Walker, supposedly. Of course, they've never actually published what goes into Johnny Walker, but it's pretty well known that Linkwood forms the backbone of several of the Johnny Walker. People do ask about the artwork on these labels. So the opulence artwork and all of our liquid artwork was done by a young artist called Mira Shu, same last name, not related. And she's actually the daughter of one of our friends. She was 15 years old at the time, which is kind of funny when you have to ask your friends if, hey, can your daughter do a label for something she's not allowed to consume herself? Luckily, she said yes. We saw some of Mira's artwork on Facebook, and I thought, it would look really cool on a whiskey bottle. So she did a really great job with our portunduses, and so we asked her back for our liquids. And so like Lori was saying, we kind of, stupid little inside joke, Link from Zelda. We said, yeah, can you do because she did a lot of sort of anime type style artwork. I said, can you do Link but as a female? And she said, sure. So we were a little nervous that it was getting a little too close to Zelda. But we still submitted it to the TTB here in America. And to our surprise, they said, sure, good, you're good to go. We're like, phew, we made it. And so we told our bottler in Scotland, like, let's go. We got the labels, we're ready to go. We said, oh, well, we need to submit it to the Scotch Whisky Association to get their label approval. And, like I said, I was like, yeah, we're not selling in Scotland. They're like, too bad. If you're going to put Scotch on it, Scotch Whisky Association gets to say whether they approve the label. And we thought, oh, of course they're going to approve the label. If the US approves the label, I'm sure those crazy Scots aren't going to have any problem with it. So we were wrong. So this was the first version of the Emergence label, and they immediately came back and said, absolutely not. This label is rejected. And we're like, why? And they said, your character on the label is too young, and this will cause the youth of Scotland to run into liquor stores and grab this bottle and become alcoholics.
Never mind that you can drink at 18 in Scotland, but not till 21 here.
Yeah, it was like, do you know your country's reputation for drinking compared to ours? So anyways, they said, no, she's too young. I said, okay. So we went back to Mira. I was like, can you age her up a little bit? So she provided that. And we said, surely that'll be good. And they said, nope, absolutely not. Still too young, still too appealing to young children. So we said, how about we just hide her face and you can't tell how old she is? And they said, good, you're good to go. And all I can say is I'm really glad they didn't see the very, very first version of the label, which looked like that, which probably would have gotten us banned from the Scotch industry forever. So that's the story of our labels. Okay. Any questions or comments on the Emergence before we move to the double Oloroso?
She's the one to do the artwork on the ROM as well?
No. We have 3 different artists who do the rum. We wanted her to do the rum line too, but she said I really need to work on my driver's license, which is probably the first time that's ever happened in
she's
rum
actually
label history.
she's actually in a really great art school and she graduates this year. So now she's 18, but she's applying to art school for college, and so she has to work on her portfolio. So she's not really available to help us.
Yeah, she got a scholarship to her current art school, and we won't be able to afford her for much longer.
But yeah, we helped her find some of her stuff.
Oh, another bottle of opulence bit the dust. There we go. Yeah, so oh yes, if and again, the strength on these are fairly high. Not as high as some of our rums. We have rums that are as much as 69%. But some of these also will benefit from a little bit of water as well. All right, so let's go to the double Oloroso. Yeah, so this is the one we put in the quarter cask. So again, you get kind of accelerated wood aging because you're in a smaller cask, higher percentage of surface area contact than a larger cask. This spent 9 months, and as you can see, the amount of color it took on compared to the Emergence is significant. So I would say for this one, yes, it's definitely still in the same lane, but you're getting kind of a heavier Oloroso component to it. almost to the point where you get, I don't want to say bitterness, but there's almost like a little bit of that matchstick sulfur that that you can get from some Oloroso finishes. So let's give this a shot. Yeah, there's like a sharpness on the very end of it, which makes it stand out from the emergence.
Or something like.
Yeah, yeah. So if you really like Oloroso, this is a good example of what it's like, especially when you hit it with 2 shots of Oloroso. So this is 59%. So as you'll see, as we do these secondary maturations, again, the ABVs are going to come down a little bit. So we went from pretty much 60%. This one's 59%. And the Madeira, which is a first fill Madeira, which meant there's probably some Madeira sloshing around in it, that'll go down another point to 58%.
It's really fascinating how the taste is different. Versus,
yeah.
as I said, the nose I thought was very similar on the two, but the taste, I mean, a world apart. Well, maybe not the entire world, but a good chunk of far from each other.
Yeah, and it is funny how you use 2 different Oloroso barrels and you can get quite a different effect. Yeah, even that. So I want to talk a little bit about sherry because as we found, we not people don't actually tend to know a lot about sherry other than the fact that they like sherry finished whiskeys. So essentially, real quick, sherry is essentially just making wine. You intentionally leave some airspace in the barrel so you don't fill it all the way, and this allows the yeast to form a layer called floor on top of the liquid. So it almost seals in all the liquid, and so the oxygen can't get to it. And then at a certain point, you want to kill that off. You throw in some very high proof alcohol. It kills the yeast, and then what you're left with is sherry. So the alcohol not only fortifies it, which makes it last longer and increases the ABV, but it also halts the yeast action. So depending on how long you let the floor go, you can develop different kinds of sherry. So the ones that are done completely under floor tend to be dry. So your Fino, Manzanilla, Amontillado. If you kill off the floor and you let oxygen start hitting it, you're going to get your darker sherries. So the ones that you usually see for aging whiskeys are your Oloroso, which is what we're tasting now, and the Pedro Jimenez, so the PX. So that's what was on the Bloom from Westland, the Kurt Cobain cask. So why do you get that color? Think of when you cut an apple and you leave it out, and so the oxygen is hitting it, the apple turns brown. So somewhat similarly, this is what happens with sherry as well. So sherry is like I'm wild about sherry. So you can get a lot of different flavor profiles from sherry. We're not going to go into all of them, but the one that really matters is Oloroso, and the PX that we had earlier. So Oloroso, that's where you get your walnuts. You do tend to get some sweetness. But there's also kind of if you just drink Oloroso straight up, you do get kind of this almost balsamic vinegar sharpness to it, which you might not expect because you don't get a lot of it when you have an Oloroso aged whiskey, but when you drink Oloroso straight, you definitely get it. And some Oloroso tends to give a little bit of a tobacco note as well. All right, let's go to the final one. So this is our Eminence. So we've crossed over the 9-year mark into 10-year with Ascendance and Eminence. And this is the one where we bought a Madeira cask and first fill and aged this for 9 months. And this brought the cask strength down to 58%. Okay, so Madeira is it's one of my favorite finishes. What's interesting is if you drink Madeira, Madeira is quite sweet. And you can get, depending on which Madeira you're drinking, you can get, some of these notes that we've posted here. Yeah, even some weird ones like mushroom and graphite. It's definitely herbal. But when you finish whiskey in Madeira, you don't necessarily get all of those flavors. You tend to get kind of what you're tasting now. Definitely a kind of a thick honeycomb. You get some nice fruit flavors. Apricot is what we hear a lot. Sometimes you can get kind of a sharp tanginess, orange. And I believe that whatever is bringing out that tangy orangeness is also why a poorly Madeira finish whiskey can be pretty bad. So if you've had a bad Madeira finish and you think Madeira sucks, probably they did a bad job of letting it age. If you let it in too long, let it age too long in Madeira, it can turn quite sour. So you have to be very, very careful when you're aging in Madeira. I also do get kind of a fudgy note on it. Essentially, I just love chocolate notes in any kind of whiskey. So you get a trace of that in here as well, and definitely the marmalade, kind of the orange peel, comes through as well. Yeah, typically when we do these tastings, the group tends to divide. People either really like the Ascendants, the Double Oloroso, or they really like the Madeira. It's fairly rare to find somebody who likes both equally. Lorri Lorri very much likes the Ascendants better, but this Madeira finish is totally my jam.
We have a rum from Madeira coming out that I do love, but yeah, I don't like this Madeira finish as much as you do.
Yeah, no, I could drink this all day. Okay, so so what is Madeira? So Madeira is another dessert wine. Essentially, you are making a wine. You're also throwing in a very high proof spirit to kill the yeast, stop the fermentation, leave some of the sugar in there before the yeast has a chance to eat it all up. Again, like sherry, they're only going to fill it halfway because they want some of that oxidization. But the real cool thing about Madeira is that you almost can't kill it because they've already done a good job of killing it. So my understanding is, so the island of Madeira, they were making this fortified wine, and then they put it on a boat, and it's just cooks in the sun the entire time, and it made it all the way over to the United States. And people are like, "Ugh, this thing is hot. It has just been boiling for weeks and weeks and weeks, so it's probably not good." And then they open up the barrel and they drank it, and they're like, "Holy cow, this is great," said George Washington, a huge Madeira fan. Yeah, so it turns out this cooking process not only kind of intensifies the flavor, but also makes it very, very stable. So you can have a bottle of Madeira that is, like 100 years old, and it's pretty stable. It tastes pretty similar to what it was when it was 1 year old. You can open a bottle of Madeira and it will last for a really, really long time. I've had bottles of Madeira that are probably 2 years old. I'm still drinking them, and they haven't lost a lot because they've essentially already been cooked to death. Really, really interesting spirit. Okay, so Madeira is technically part of Portugal. It's actually closer to Africa, as we found out the hard way, because like what Lorri is saying, we're the first American independent bottler to be bringing in some rum from Madeira, and whereas the cask was fairly affordable, the shipping from this island was super not affordable. I think we almost spent more in shipping than we did for the actual rum itself. So there are several types of Madeira. Typically, the one that they'll use for aging is called Malmsey, which is the sweetest of the Madeiras. If you're interested in trying Madeiras, my recommendation is go all the way to the dry one, the Sertial. That's just a fantastic, fantastic pour. Okay, so just to sum up, we've done run through quite a different number of different cask finishes, and just to sum up what the cask factors are. First of all, the type of cask. Are you Banyuls? Are you sherry? Are you Madeira? Then you get into the fill numbers. So is it first fill? Is it second fill? Is it a refill? How many times has the cask been used? And then sometimes you even see the rechar, where they'll take a barrel that's been used quite a bit. They'll scrape off the innermost layer of it, and then they'll fire it up again, and that can often rejuvenate a barrel. The Springbank is the most renowned for that practice. Their rechar sherry bottlings are some of the best in the world. Then we go to size. So we talked about sherry butts all the way down to a quarter cask, and you can see how the size can really affect the flavor that you're getting, and also the quickness of the aging. And the final factor that is that's worth noting is the type of oak that's being used. So most of the time we're seeing Quercus alba, which is American oak. American oak tends to be softer, easier to work with, and imparts flavors that you tend to associate with bourbon. So your vanillas, your kind of butteriness, sweetness, all very much part of the American oak profile. And again, most Scotch is aged in American oak. However, when you get into some of your sherry casks or Banyuls, your French oak, your European oak, that's called Quercus robur. European oak has a much tighter grain. It's a much harder wood to work with. You can't use the same sawing techniques that you do on the softer American wood. And you tend to get more of your tannins, more of your sharper spices. And of course, if it's been soaking in sherry, then you're going to get some of that liquid as well. And there are a bunch of other ones as well. Moncolica, which you may know as Mizunara, which you see in a lot of Japanese whiskeys as well. So yeah, type, fill number, size, and oak is where you get your range of cask influences. Okay, so why don't we go into people's favorites? If you want to just drop your favorites into the chat and give us an idea of what you like the most.
I actually have a poll.
Oh, you have a poll. Okay.
Oh. Well, there you go.
You guys
Excellent.
will have to
We
vote your own.
Wow.
We always do a poll. And you're
Yeah.
gonna have to guess what our favorite is.
Yeah. And I always forget when I'm running these that I don't get to vote, and I'm very sad about it.
Right. Oh, this is awesome. We should definitely
Okay,
do this.
I need
love
to I need to find this technology.
it. Is it built into Zoom?
Yeah, it's built into Zoom.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so
Fantastic.
Jane, what was your favorite since you can't vote?
I'm sort of tied between the Voodoo and the Eminence.
Oh,
I think the
okay.
Voodoo might edge it out just slightly.
Huh. Okay.
That's cool.
They're very different.
Yeah,
Voodoo
my
is very
tastes
good.
are like this. I like all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
The other thing that we like to do is get a photo with everybody on screen. So I figure once we're done with this, we'll do a quick photo before we let everybody go. But
Okay. Very cool.
I
Yeah.
have to say these have been absolutely spectacular. Vadim was raving to me about the Linkwoods while he was pouring them, because I was talking to him on the phone, and he's like, I can't believe you're not here smelling these. They smell so amazing. Oh my God. So I'm super thrilled to actually have gotten to try them.
It's funny because when I heard it, I've heard about this before, and then when you said Diageo and Johnny Walker, I go, oh yeah, that's right. I did a tasting where we did all the single malts that goes into a Johnny Walker Black.
Really?
And then,
Oh, that's cool.
and then we all got to try to see if we could mix a Johnny Walker Black.
And how did that go?
Was there cool?
Well, I mean, my work level the next day was not that good. But no, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, and they own another one, Glen Ellicky, something like that.
Oh, I love Yeah.
which is a great dram, and it's a component of Johnny Walker Black.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
I didn't know that either, but
I have a
so many small like
Mortlock as well.
yeah.
So so just real quick, so these are some casks that we're considering. Again, they'll mention the North British as a really good single grain. I believe all the others are single malts. So we're considering those. We just released 6 new rums. So if you're into rum, we've got a nice selection. The flagship of it is our second release from Beanley, which is an Australian rum. So if you think you don't like rum, but you really like whiskey, try to check out an Australian rum. So this is
If you think you don't like rum, you're wrong. So let us change your mind.
Yeah, we also have a new privateer coming out that is also aged in one of our newer bourbon casks as well. All right, and so once again, there's the code if you'd like to order something. I'm really grateful that you guys have already started ordering some of that wonderful opulence. We really want to get that into people's hands. So the code is for 15% off through the end of this month. And if you like what you've tasted and you want to get advance notice on what's coming out and other events that we're doing, feel free to join our mailing list. You can either that link raisingclasses.com/list, or you can just scan that QR code as well.
And you guys have been delightful. We would love to do another event with you guys.
Are you guys in any stores in the Southern California area?
We're close. We're this close to California.
Yeah, we're talking to a distributor. We do have there's a private pick of a rum from the island of Reunion that will be hitting mostly the LA region probably in the next couple of weeks. And we're also talking to Martin K at Smuggler's Cove, one of the great rum tiki bars in the world, and he may be carrying some of our stuff too. But we also have some other releases that we're looking to get into California by the end of the year.
Yeah, Spaghetti Western, who is the distributor we're working with, they would like to put all of our stuff out. So we're working on that. California's been a little challenging, but hopefully we'll be in California really soon. I mean, we will be in California next week, actually, but not all of our spirits yet, but hopefully soon.
Oh, we had a question for the discount code. Let me show that one more time. Yeah, so the discount code is okay. It's in the chat. Yeah, 10
in the chat.
RG 0424.
So before we forget, everybody raise a glass.
Can I do water? It's okay.
You can do water because you're out. That's okay. We wanted to take a moment and say thank you so much for this absolutely brilliant and fun tasting. We appreciate the time that you've spent with us. So everybody smile for the camera and say cheers.
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 Got one. And would you like to take a guess on what everyone's favorite dram of the evening was?
It's like picking between our children.
Yes. We like to put people on the spot. Pick between your children quickly. It was a fire.
We love all our children equally, but
We love some of them more.
I love one more equally.
Which of your children do you think we like the most tonight is the question.
I'm gonna say Bloom.
I was gonna say Bloom too. That's just because we love that one.
No, I like Stories the best, but everybody else seems to like Bloom. What was the favorite?
I think you won't be too shocked, but Bloom was not the favorite.
Wow.
Oh.
Hey.
Yeah.
Eminent.
So
Madeira. Here we go.
by a few, the Eminence took the lead, followed by Opulence, and then Stories, Bloom, Voodoo, and Ascendance.
Yeah.
Wow.
Stories is my favorite, so I'm kind of happy to see that as third.
Yeah, you like your finishes. You can see that.
See, it's funny. I mean, Jane, just like you, I had a hard time choosing between the Voodoo but my other one was the Ascendants, but I ended up with the Voodoo. As you guys know, I'm more of a peat head, and that smoke just won me over between the two.
Yeah, that's
Well,
great.
great.
That's great to
to
hear.
hear.
And I have to say, like, it's not common like that we'd go through an entire lineup and there's not a bottle here that I wouldn't want to buy. Like, they're all fantastic. You guys did an excellent job with it. Definitely fun featuring, two different brands that way with Westland and the Linkwood in three different ways. Just super fun and
yeah, I thought
enjoyable.
that was really cool.
Yeah,
Oh,
thank you.
you.
Yeah, we always try to make our tastings in some degrees comparative, because I think you really start to learn what you like when you do side by sides for things that have one variable off. And that's how we learned. That's how we learned spirits as well. So we always try to put a little spin on our tastings.
Yeah.
Nice. And
So
I'd say
have us
Go
back
ahead.
for a rum tasting. We'll convince you that you love rum, I promise.
That's just what I was gonna say. With after tasting all these casks, you've acquired a bunch of new fans, and we like doing all sorts of different spirits. So we would definitely be in on a rum tasting that way. That'd be awesome.
Please book one with Vadim, please.
Yeah, don't worry about it. I will twist his arm for everybody. So
Great.
Uh,
Hope to see all of you again.
You guys, your labels are. I saw you guys your stuff at Saratoga store. And
Oh
your
yeah,
bottle-
at Pursville. Yeah.
Yeah, and your stuff stood out. Like you guys doing a very good job on the labeling.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Saratoga's a great.
And on the peak, and I think the link with it's for me, it's the first time that you take the master cask and divide it with three.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think it's brilliant. It's kind of.
brilliant is the right word for it. Go on.
I'm probably gonna end up buying those three. Like, just
probably
it doesn't make sense to taste it differently.
I love hearing that. Yeah, I mean, it was probably more desperation, but we'll take the compliment. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you know Holly at Pursville?
Yeah. We met with Ollie, and I was there with Vadim. We came back from Batka over there in Vermont. So.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So
yeah,
they actually was both there, Holly and so I forget was his name.
Yeah.
So you went to Bacta camp?
Yeah, we went to Batka. Yeah.
I heard about that.
And to Whistle Pig after, but
yeah, she's one of the most genuinely nice people on the planet. She's so cool.
Yeah. And they have very nice, unique store. Like
very nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Only good stuff. Which is
exactly.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. It was so great to meet new people, and hopefully we can do this again.
Yeah, and if any of you want to just nerd out about whiskey or rum, our email's contact@raisingglasses.com. We just love talking about it. I think sometimes we love talking about it more than actually drinking it. So yeah, don't be shy. We love making
Sometimes
new friends.
that's just as good as drinking it.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. This has just been absolutely spectacular. I'm gonna turn the recording off so we can just chat. You can hang out as long as you want to, but thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. It's awesome.
Tell Vadim thank you also for signing us up.
For now.
Absolutely will do.
I don't think we're